Something strange started happening. Things that used to trigger you don't hit the same anymore. The comments that once stayed in your mind all day now pass through without settling. The behavior that once made your chest tighten now feels distant. The situations that once pulled you into overthinking no longer hold you there. And at first, it can feel confusing. You wonder, do I just not care anymore? Have I become cold? Why don't I react the way I used to? Because for so long, your reactions felt automatic, immediate, intense, almost out of your control. So when that intensity starts to fade, it can feel like something is missing. But what's actually happening is something much deeper. You're not losing your emotions. You're gaining regulation. For a long time, your triggers weren't random. They were patterns, patterns shaped by past experiences, old wounds, unprocessed emotions, unmet needs that were still looking for resolution. So when something in the present touched those old places, your reaction wasn't just about what was happening now. It was about everything that came before it. That's why it felt so intense, so immediate, so hard to control. But now, something inside you has started to shift, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. You've started processing what once stayed unresolved. You've started understanding what once felt confusing. You've started sitting with emotions instead of being consumed by them. And because of that, your nervous system no longer reacts the same way. The trigger may still appear, but it no longer takes over. There is space now, space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, you are no longer reacting. You are choosing. For a long time, your reactions felt immediate, almost automatic, like something inside you was being pulled before you even had time to think. A tone of voice, a delayed reply, a certain kind of distance, and suddenly your body would respond as if something important was at stake. Your chest tightens, your thoughts speed up, your mind starts searching for meaning. What did I do? Why are they acting like this? Is something wrong? Are they pulling away? And before you even realize it, you're no longer responding to the present moment. You're reacting from something deeper, because triggers are rarely about now. They're echoes, echoes of moments where you felt unseen, uncertain, unchosen, unstable, times where your emotions didn't feel safe to fully exist, times where your needs weren't met or understood. So your system adapted. It learned to stay alert, to scan for changes, to notice subtle shifts in behavior, not because you were overreacting, but because your system was trying to protect you. It was trying to prevent that same feeling from happening again. And over time, that protection became sensitivity. You became highly aware of emotional changes, highly responsive to inconsistency, highly attuned to anything that felt uncertain. But without regulation, that awareness didn't feel like clarity. It felt like overwhelm, because every small shift felt significant. Every silence felt loaded. Every change in tone felt personal. And your mind tried to make sense of it as quickly as possible, which often led to overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to find answers before you even knew what the real question was. But the truth is, your reactions were never just reactions. They were learned responses, built over time, reinforced through experience, shaped by moments where emotional safety felt uncertain. So when something in the present even slightly resembled those past experiences, your system responded as if it was happening again, not because you were weak, but because your system was trying to keep you safe, using what it had learned. And for a long time, that pattern felt like who you were. Someone who reacts quickly, someone who feels deeply, someone who struggles to stay calm in certain situations. But something important has been changing, not on the surface, but underneath. You've started paying attention to your reactions. Instead of judging them, you began observing them. You started asking, why does this affect me so strongly? Where is this feeling actually coming from? Is this about now or something older? And those questions created awareness. And awareness is where regulation begins. Because once you can see what's happening inside you, you are no longer completely controlled by it. You begin creating space between the trigger and the meaning your mind immediately assigns to it. And that space changes everything. What changed wasn't the world around you. People didn't suddenly become clearer. Situations didn't suddenly become easier. The same kinds of moments still happen, the same tones, the same delays, the same uncertainties, but your experience of them is no longer the same because something internal has shifted. Your relationship with your own emotions. For a long time, your emotions felt like something that happened to you. They arrived quickly. They took over your body. They shaped your thoughts before you had time to question them. And your role was simply to react, to follow the feeling wherever it led. But slowly, you began doing something different. You started staying with the feeling instead of becoming it. Instead of immediately reacting, you paused, even if it was just for a moment. And in that moment, you noticed something you hadn't seen before. The feeling rises, it peaks, and then, if you don't feed it, it begins to settle. That alone changes everything because it shows you that emotions are not permanent states. They are waves, and waves pass. Before, you were reacting at the peak of the wave. Now, you're learning to ride it, to observe it, without immediately giving it meaning. And that's where regulation begins to form, not by suppressing what you feel, but by allowing it, without being controlled by it. You stop telling yourself, I shouldn't feel this, and started asking, what is this trying to show me? That shift created understanding, and understanding reduced intensity, because when something is understood, it feels less threatening, less urgent, less overwhelming. You also began separating the present from the past. Before, everything blended together. A small moment now felt as heavy as something old. But now, you can pause and ask, is this about what's happening right now, or something this reminds me of? And that question grounds you. It brings you back to reality. It reminds you, not every feeling requires a reaction. Not every discomfort means something is wrong. Not every silence is rejection. Not every shift is a threat. And that clarity calms your system because your body no longer needs to stay on high alert. It begins to trust that you can handle what you feel, that you won't be overwhelmed by it, that you won't be consumed by it. And when your system feels that safety, it stops reacting as intensely. That's why things don't trigger you the same way anymore. Not because you care less, but because you feel safer within yourself. And when you feel safe within yourself, the world feels less threatening. There's a moment in this process that feels almost unfamiliar. You notice it in real time. Something happens that used to trigger you. The same situation, the same tone, the same kind of behavior. And for a split second, the old feeling tries to rise. But this time, it doesn't take over. It pauses. And in that pause, You feel something new. Choice. Before, there was no space. Just trigger then reaction. Immediate. Automatic. Now, there's a gap. A small but powerful space between what you feel and what you do next. And inside that space, you are no longer controlled by the moment. You are aware of it. You notice the thought forming. You notice the emotion rising, but you're not pulled into it. You're observing it. And that observation creates distance, not emotional distance from yourself, but distance from the intensity. You begin asking different questions. Do I actually need to react to this? Is this worth my energy? What is the calmest truth here? Those questions slow everything down. And in that slower space, your response changes. You don't rush to fix the situation. You don't rush to explain yourself. You don't rush to secure reassurance. Instead, you stay grounded. You let the moment be what it is without immediately trying to control it. And that grounded presence changes how others experience you too, because you're no longer reacting from intensity. You're responding from clarity. There's less urgency in your voice, less tension in your body, less emotional pressure in your words. You're not trying to force resolution. You're allowing reality to reveal itself. And something surprising happens when you do this. You start seeing people more clearly, because when you're not caught in reaction, you're able to observe without distortion. You notice patterns without overinterpreting them. You notice effort without exaggerating it. You notice inconsistency without explaining it away. And that clarity protects you, not by closing you off, but by keeping you grounded in what's real. You're no longer reacting to what something could mean. You're responding to what it actually is. And that difference is where your power is now. Because emotional regulation isn't about becoming passive, it's about becoming precise. You choose where your energy goes. You choose what deserves a response. You choose when to engage and when to step back. And that choice comes from being anchored within yourself, not in someone else's behavior, not in external outcomes, but in your own emotional stability. And once you experience that, you realize something you didn't before. You're not at the mercy of your triggers anymore. You're in relationship with them. You can feel them without becoming them. And that is what real growth actually looks like. The final shift isn't about never being triggered again. It's about no longer fearing your triggers. For a long time, your reactions felt unpredictable, overwhelming, like something you had to manage or avoid. So you tried to control your environment, avoid certain conversations, stay away from situations that might set you off. Protect yourself by staying one step ahead. But underneath that, there was always a quiet tension. What if it happens again? What if I lose control? What if I react in a way I regret? That fear is what made triggers feel so powerful. Not just the emotion itself, but the belief that you couldn't handle it when it came. But now, that belief is no longer there. Not because life stopped being unpredictable, but because you changed how you meet it. You trust yourself now. You trust that if something activates you, you won't immediately lose yourself in it. You trust that you can pause, that you can feel without reacting, that you can step back before responding. And that trust creates a deep sense of internal safety. You're no longer trying to avoid discomfort. You're able to move through it calmly, steadily, without turning it into something bigger than it is. And that changes how you move through the world. You become less reactive to to other people's behavior, less affected by external shifts, less dependent on everything going right, to feel okay, because your stability is no longer outside you, it's within you. And from that place, your standards become clearer, not driven by emotion, but grounded in awareness. You no longer tolerate things just because they don't trigger you as strongly anymore. That's important because regulation is not tolerance, it's clarity. You can stay calm and still recognize what doesn't align. You can feel grounded and still walk away from what doesn't meet you. You can respond peacefully and still choose differently. That's the difference between growth and suppression. You're not ignoring what you feel, you're understanding it. You're not dismissing your reactions, you're guiding them. And because of that, you no longer need intensity to tell you what's right for you. You can feel truth, even in calm, even in stillness, even without a strong emotional reaction. And that is one of the most powerful signs of emotional maturity. The moment you stop measuring your growth by how strongly you feel and start recognizing it by how clearly you see. If this message resonated with you, then you may already be experiencing that quiet shift. You can stay calm and still recognize what doesn't align. You can feel grounded and still walk away from what doesn't meet you. You can respond peacefully and still choose differently. That's the difference between growth and suppression. You're not ignoring what you feel, you're understanding it. You're not dismissing your reactions, you're guiding them. And because of that, you no longer need intensity to tell you what's right for you. You can feel truth, even in calm, even in stillness, even without a strong emotional reaction. And that is one of the most powerful signs of emotional maturity. The moment you stop measuring your growth by how strongly you feel and start recognizing it by how clearly you see. If this message resonated with you, then you may already be experiencing that quiet shift, the one where you're no longer controlled by your triggers, but connected to yourself. And if you're there, stay with us at Depth of Us, because this space is for women who are no longer reacting from old wounds, but responding from clarity, self-trust, and emotional strength, the one where you're no longer controlled by your triggers, but connected to yourself. And if you're there, stay with us at Depth of Us, because this space is for women who are no longer reacting from old wounds, but responding from clarity, self-trust, and emotional strength.